So in the latest My Hero Academia chapter, we are introduced to a brand new mysterious character that will potentially become a brand new villain in the epilogue of the series. There are so many theories out there as for who the identity of this mysterious character really is, and today I want to throw my hat in the ring here, give my theory on who this new villain in the series is, as I believe it's already been hinted at for a while already on where they actually came from, with their origins already being within the series, and also debunking some of the other theories on the crying villain's identity. Now, in chapter 425, as Deku and his friends chat after school, we cut away to somewhere else in the ruins of Japan. Here we see a pair of scissors followed by some heavy breathing, then we see a brand new character crying, looking hella traumatized, with them then cutting what seems to be possible stitches or just strings that was keeping their mouths closed. As in the next page, we see them walking clearly hurt as they continue to breathe heavily, their fingers being visibly damaged, and these freshly cut strings dangling from around where their mouth would be at. The panels that follow this shows a destroyed home with the door open, which is where I believe they actually came out of, and a panel of them walking barefoot. And that's pretty much it. All we get is a few panels of this mystery character, but what we do get, I feel, is enough to tell us that this character is meant to parallel Tenko and there being no heroes around to help / save him, which led Tenko to All For One and his eventual turn to villainy, as well as this character not being any other character that we've seen previously in the series. The reason why I say this is because we have never seen someone in the series that had anything that covered their mouths, to the point where they needed to cut strings that prevented them from talking. But I do feel like I know exactly where this character originally came from, and their origins resides within Dabi's backstory inside the facility. You see, in Dabi's backstory, after Toya had burned himself to a crisp on Sekoto Peak, All For One walks through his flames and takes Toya to a facility filled with a bunch of other children. Here, a few years passed by, where it's revealed that Toya was taken to this facility and got a bunch of surgery that saved his life. All For One offers to train Toya, but Toya refuses. All For One's offer, as his obsession with endeavor made him only want to be trained by his father. This argument led to Toya setting the facility on fire, where he inevitably escaped and was considered by Garaki to be a failed experiment. Garaki then explains that the facility Toya was being held in was a facility filled with spare vessels for All For One, in case something was to happen to Tenko, as the children within the facility were filled with ferocity and hate just like Tenko and Toya were, making them perfect spares for All For One in his Shigaraki contingency plan. In the volume 35 extra pages, it's revealed that due to Dabi's flames being so weak at the time, the facility actually didn't burn down, and the flames were easily put out. Garaki, fearing that his wicked deeds would be exposed, blamed Haruki Sun-Sun, aka the Sun Doctor, for accidentally starting the fire, thus protecting the facility's dark secret. And since no one had died and the story never made the news, the heroes and the authorities were unfortunately none the wiser on Garaki's hidden atrocities. Thanks to Dabi's backstory, I believe the new villain came from this facility. They were a spare vessel for All For One. Now, some of you might be like, wait, this doesn't quite add up, since the facility from the outside doesn't look like the house that the new character seemingly escapes from. Well, we know that Garaki had tons of facilities hidden all over Japan, and yes, a vast majority of them did get raided and taken over by the police and heroes. But as we saw after the Tartarus prison break, All For One did have a hideout that the heroes didn't know about and could never find. So it's possible that this house that the new villain comes out of was another one of those facilities that the heroes and authorities just never found. And thanks to the all-out war and all of the villains being on All For One's side the day of the all-out war, the destruction caused by the war and defeat of All For One possibly made it so this person was able to finally escape. It's very clear that something extremely messed up was going down where this character came from, because they had to use scissors to cut strings that were seemingly keeping them from speaking, which this was possibly done happened to them to further build up hate within them so that they could be a better fit to be All For One's new vessel. Now, I do believe this character is an entirely brand new character, never before seen in the series, meaning that their identity is still truly a mystery for right now, but it's clear that they had to originate from the same facility that Dabi and the other children were being held in to become the next All For One. I could 100% be wrong, but this just makes the most sense to me, as it would tie up the loose end of the facility full of All For One's backup vessels. I've seen so many wild theories on the identity of the brand new villain that on first glance does seem possible, but the more you think about it, the more they don't make sense. So let's quickly debunk a few theories in regards to the identity of this mysterious new villain. The first one being that this is actually Shirakumo. The reason why this couldn't be Shirakumo is for the simple fact that Shirakumo never had anything that covered his mouth, and in this mysterious villain's appearance, they clearly have something that covers their mouth, as they ended up using scissors to cut open the strings or possible stitches that were most likely keeping their mouth shut. And we know that Shirakumo was able to speak at the very end of the war, and when he was initially set free in the hospital by Spinner. So it's pretty much impossible for Shirakumo to be the new villain. As we see in the next page, there are strings visibly dangling around their head. Also, Shirakumo has light bluish hair, and though the manga is in black and white, the black on this character's hair means that their hair has a dark color to it, and Shirakumo's hair is always depicted with white to show that his hair has a lighter color to it. The second character predicted to be this mystery character's true identity is Deku's dad, Hisashi Midoriya. Now, I get the meme of Deku's dad being a bum or whatever, but given the context surrounding his dad, we know that he is supposed to be working overseas, and we know that Horikoshi did state that Deku's dad would show up at the end, but it really wouldn't make any sense for this to be his dad given what we know about him already, as he wouldn't have been in Japan during the collapse of society, as no one was able to get in or out of Japan during that time period. So it wouldn't be possible for him to be in the situation that we see the mystery character to be in. And the only reason why people believe it's Deku's dad in the first place is simply because Horikoshi stated that Hisashi would appear at the end of the series, and for the simple fact that he's never appeared in the series before. The third character predicted is that this is actually Shigaraki, somehow reincarnated / brought back to life in some way. The reason why this person couldn't possibly be Shigaraki is the sole fact that we saw Shigaraki's body get completely destroyed and crumble away at the end of the war. Now, I will say that while I don't think it is Shigaraki, I do think it is possible. All For One and Garaki did a lot of bioengineering in the background when it came to the Nomu. It's possible All For One made Garaki dabble in cloning and created a clone of Tenko. All For One made Tenko a perfect vessel for him, so why not have a backup of Tenko in case he needs to go back to square one? At the end of the war, All For One in a panic did say that he would just start from scratch. Maybe this is what he meant. Thankfully, All For One lost, but all of the destruction caused by the war could have affected the facility that this clone was being held in, and they managed to escape. Or maybe Tenko's essence went to the clone after death, bringing the clone of him to life. Regardless, I doubt that this could be Shigaraki, and the main reason people believe that it is because the black hair resembling Tenko and them being barefoot, which is pretty much a Shigaraki trademark at this point. The fourth and final character is that this is actually Spinner in human form. The reason why people believe this to be Spinner in a human form is because in chapter 424 there was a panel that showed the scales in a container that followed up with a panel of someone holding their stomach. The second panel could have easily have been Ochako because of her stab wounds, but let's say that it's someone else. Now, the scales in the container match the scales shown to have fallen off of Spinner's body when he fell in chapter 373. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time we saw Spinner, he was passed out at the hospital where there was a bunch of law enforcement and a few heroes. That man has to be in custody, because there is no way he would be roaming the streets freely like this. Despite the pants matching the two, the hair color on top of the mystery character having a type of shirt, whereas Spinner was left shirtless at the hospital, points to this character being someone completely different. If anything, I do think Spinner was being held in the hospital at the time, and who knows, he could have definitely reverted back to a human form, but I don't think this character could be him. And while I do think these theories are fun to discuss, the more you think about about them, the more it just wouldn't make sense for them to possibly be this new villain. I'm not saying my theory is perfect by any means, but I just feel it just makes the most sense for this character to simply be just that, a new character that has possible ties to All For One and would solve the mystery of what happened to the facility filled with All For One's backup vessels, as we never really got a follow-up to the facility filled with All For One's backup vessels. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on my theory on the villain's identity and origins being the result of All For One's Shigaraki contingency plan. Do you think they could possibly be someone we already know? Let me know everything in the comment section below. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button, and if you are new to the Kitoroki channel, then be sure to subscribe with notifications on so that you don't miss any My Hero Academia videos. And I'll see you all in the next one.